Shalom and good evening. Today is March 13th. We're watching together channel 12. I'll help you with the Hebrew. And it is the 159th day of the war between Israel and Hamas. And the anchor begins actually with with a story about a strange and unusual statement that a brigade general said. He's a division commander actually. And he's leading a war in Khan Yunis. He's speaking in his speech about many different morals and many different values, but he's also saying something very unusual. He's talking to the government, and he's telling them, you need to be worthy of us. You need to be worthy of every soldier who has fallen in battle. Let's watch this together. Here he is, the Brigade General Dan Goldfuss. We see Gaza in the background. We see a tank and another army vehicle, and he's saying, I'm speaking from a heart of a fighter. From a fighter that has been fighting since October 7th. And since then I have not stopped fighting. I have not stopped sending fighters to the fire, and I'm with them. He also says, don't worry, we have taken, we do take, and we will take responsibility. And he's saying that in contrast to the government leaders. Aval atem, but you, atem chayavim, you must be worthy of us. Atem chayavim, you must be worthy to all of those soldiers and fighters that fell in battle. You must be worthy of all those reservists that fought side by side and put the divisions away. You must, atem chayavim, you must make sure we do not go back to October 6th. That all this effort was not in vain. Put this hard in your head, every day, every hour. I ask, he says, to find what unifies you, to find the togetherness, beyachad, mechabe, what gets you together. Make it worth it, he says, and she repeats it. And the anchor says, on one hand, this speech is what many chief officers actually feel, but on the other hand, this speech was not in line with the chief of staff. He did not know about this. Here he is, Dan Goldfuss, the brigade commander. So he will be he is called to a clarification talk with the chief of staff. And the reporter says that he actually turned in his speech to leaders, not to one specific leader. And he's really coming out of a love to the country, the love to the land, and he's asking to the government, to the leaders of the government, to be unified, because he sees how the dividing speech is starting up again. So this is really what Channel 12 is opening with a very unusual speech from a high-ranked IDF commander. The story is actually continuing. They're continuing to talk about it, to discuss it. The anchor said that the IDF gave a formal response that they do not accept what the officer said about you must, to the government, right? You must be worthy of us. So as the discussion continues, the question that is asked is it appropriate in the middle of a war that a general in the army will preach morality to the government? The former general, Israel Ziv, says no, he's not preaching morality. He feels that really the country is at stake, that the unification values are so important that he's feeling he needs to share this. So there are two sides to this, and the discussion is big. The next story is about the readiness in Ramadan. This morning there was a terrorist attack where a female fighter and a security guard got stabbed by a 15-year-old Palestinian. They got stabbed lightly, you can say, 6 stabs, but considered a light injury. The 15-year-old Palestinian boy comes to the checkpoint with an electric bike, armed with a knife. Yeah, he stabs the female fighter, he stabs the security guard. They're both in the hospital right now. Here we hear the security guard says, he was quick. He stabbed me 6 times, 3 times in the head, 1 time in the shoulder, another time in the hand, another time in the neck. Here's the chief of the police in the IDF, and he sees, we feel the stress, we feel the tension of the Ramadan. We need to continue to be very, very alert. A few hours before this, a 12-year-old Palestinian boy he threw explosive bottles towards the forces An IDF soldier shot him and he died. Here's a Palestinian man. One of the residents says, I am sad for every child that's killed, Jew or Arab. And here we hear the Minister of the National Security. He says, time after time we see that terrorists throw explosives and are trying to hurt our forces. I will not let the Palestinians hurt our forces under my watch. There was another incident next to Pisgat Ze'ev, which is a neighborhood within Jerusalem. Also there, 2 Palestinians were killed as they were throwing explosive bottles at the forces. And here in the Temple Mount today, so many, tens of thousands of Palestinians are worshiping. And we hear that in the security forces, there is a peak in readiness, metichut bitchonit b'Ramadan, the security tension in the Ramadan. There is a peak in the number of alerts for terrorist attacks. So the army and the police are very much backed up. The intelligence is working hard as the number of alerts is very high for terrorist attacks. The next story is the fighting in Khan Yunis. One of the reporters joined one of the elite groups in Gaza, in Khan Yunis. It's now really most of the fighting is left for commando and elite units, especially in very dense areas. They're high-rise buildings. It's built very closely, very densely, and it's a complicated task. They're fighting terrorists face to face. They need to work very, very carefully. You hear tanks, you hear the shooting. He says, we haven't experienced such fighting. Every building here, we're facing terrorists. We're in a very aggressive offense right now. He says the enemy is or running away or surrendering. And here's one fighter says that on the one hand, we need to fight very carefully, very precisely. On the other hand, we need to make progress. And still, these places are full of terrorists, but they're still full of Gaza citizens as well. So that's why the commando units, the elite units, are mostly fighting here. Some soldiers here are in their active service, but others are reservists that are entering their 4th month in fighting in Gaza. He says, my wife is at home with 4 children. She's the real fighter. She's holding the home. She's giving us backwind. But the big question is Rafat, south of Khan Yunis. There's much to be done there, but the government has yet decided. This is the update for today. Keep Israel in your prayers as the tension of Ramadan is very, very high. You can follow us on social media. For more stories, go to allisrael.com. Like this video if you liked it. This is Rotem Magen for All Israel News.